Good morning. Now I am in the rice field to work. Today I will clean the grass that interferes with the growth of the rice plants in this rice field. I will pull out the grass that has grown quite thickly. Morning dew still clung to the tips of the rice leaves, and the air felt fresh with a gentle breeze greeting us. The sky looked bright, a sign of good weather for working in the fields. Today, my job was to clear the weeds growing between the rice plants. These weeds, if left alone, could hinder the growth of the rice because they would compete for nutrients from the soil. Therefore, I had to pull them out one by one so that the rice plants could grow well and fertilely. I started to walk into the middle of the rice field, feeling the soil that was still slightly damp beneath my feet. Carefully, I bent down and started to pull out the weeds that had grown quite thickly. Sometimes, the roots of the grass were stuck firmly in the ground, so I had to pull them with extra force to really pull them out by the roots. While working, I heard the sound of trickling water flowing in a small ditch on the edge of the rice field. Occasionally, small birds flew over the green expanse, as if enjoying this beautiful morning. I continued to work enthusiastically, even though sweat began to pour down my forehead. Clearing the grass is indeed tiring work, but I know that this is an important part of the farming process. I want the harvest to be optimal, with healthy and quality rice grains. Therefore, I must not be lazy or give up. The sun is getting higher, but Aju still continues my work and I see the results of the work I have done, plots of rice fields that are starting to be clean of weeds. A sense of satisfaction enveloped my heart, because I know that every effort I make today will bring benefits during the harvest. I will make sure that in this way all the weeds will be uprooted so that there are no more to interfere with the growth of the rice. Today is indeed tiring, but I am sure that this hard work will pay off when the harvest comes and I see the expanse of rice that is turning beautifully yellow. Every now and then I take a deep breath of the cool morning air as I carry out my main task today: clearing the weeds growing among the rice plants. These weeds will compete with the rice plants in absorbing nutrients from the soil. Therefore, I have to pull them out one by one so that the rice plants can grow well and healthily. I started to walk into the middle of the rice field, feeling the still damp soil beneath my feet. Carefully, I bent down so as not to damage the rice plants. Some grass roots were quite firmly embedded in the soil, so I had to pull them with extra force to really pull them out by the roots. While I was busy pulling out the weeds, my eyes caught something moving among the water in the rice field. A snail. These snails can also be a threat to rice plants, especially the golden snails that often eat young shoots. If there are too many of them, it can cause crop failure. So, besides pulling out the weeds, I also collected the snails that I found. I took one by one the snails that moved among the muddy water, putting them in the bucket that I brought. Some snails hide behind the rice stalks or are embedded in the mud, so I have to be more careful in looking for them. Sometimes, I see pink snail eggs stuck to the rice stalks or around the rice field embankments. I pick them up so that they don't hatch and increase the number of snails in this rice field. The sound of trickling water flowing in a small ditch on the edge of the rice field sounds soothing. Small birds fly above the rice field, as if enjoying this bright morning. Although sweat is starting to pour down my forehead, I remain enthusiastic. I know that this work is important so that the rice plants can grow well without being disturbed by weeds and snail pests. The bucket I brought is almost full of the snails I have collected. I can do 2 jobs today, weeding the rice field and hunting snails. I took a deep breath, wiping the sweat that was streaming down my temples with the back of my hand. This time, I hoped that the grass would not grow thickly again. I had pulled out the roots one by one, making sure that there was nothing left that could grow back anytime soon. However, in my heart, there was a little worry. If the grass continued to grow when the rice started to grow big, I would have a hard time weeding it again. When the rice stalks were thick and towering, the space between the plants would become narrower, making my work more difficult and tiring. I looked at the expanse of rice fields in front of me. The young rice fields were still green, growing lushly under the warm sunlight. If all went well, in a few months, they would turn yellow, ready to be harvested. However, the journey to harvest was not easy. In addition to the weeds that continued to grow non-stop, there were threats of pests, unpredictable weather, and various other challenges that could come at any time. I remember, last year I had a hard time. At that time, I was late in weeding the rice fields, and the grass had grown so thickly between the rice stalks. When I finally had time to clean it, the roots had already gripped the soil tightly, competing for nutrients with the rice plants. As a result, the harvest I got was not as much as I had hoped. Since then, I have been determined to be more diligent in caring for the rice fields, not letting the weeds take over the land that should be a place for fertile rice to grow. I looked around. Several other farmers were still busy with their work. Some were plowing, some were fertilizing, and some were like me, weeding their fields from weeds. I smiled a little, realizing that this was part of a farmer's life, working hard tirelessly, always trying to give the best for the crops planted with great hopes. I squatted down again, pulling out some of the grass that I had missed earlier. After being satisfied with the results of today's work, I stood up, stretching my arms to relieve the soreness. I hope that this time my efforts would not be in vain. I hope the grass won't grow thickly again, at least until the rice is big enough to cover the ground and inhibit the growth of weeds.
A few days ago, I had pulled them out one by one, making sure that none were left among the clumps of rice that were starting to grow well. However, as if tirelessly, the grass grew back, as if challenging me in a never-ending battle. I took a deep breath, realizing that this was not a one-time or two-time job. Weeding the rice fields was part of a routine that had to be carried out, a cycle that repeated itself over time. When I got a large grass, I had to exert more energy. Sweat began to pour down my temples, wetting the shabby shirt I was wearing. However, I did not complain. And I knew that this was not just an ordinary job. This was part of my struggle to ensure that these rice fields grew well, without interference from weeds that greedily absorbed nutrients from the soil. The sun was getting higher. Its rays felt increasingly stinging on my skin. I stopped for a moment, wiping my sweat with my sleeve. I looked around. Some of the rice fields were now free of grass. A small smile appeared on my lips. Even though I know that in a few days the grass will probably grow back, I will still come back here, repeating the same process. Because that is life in the rice fields. Full of hard work, full of patience, and always with hope at the end.
With slow steps, I walked away from the rice field, occasionally looking back, making sure that everything was clean. Today may be finished, but tomorrow, the day after, and so on, there is still other work waiting. I know, being a farmer is a never-ending struggle, but behind it, there is a satisfaction that cannot be replaced by anything. The satisfaction of seeing the plants grow well, and the hope that one day they will produce abundant results.